and welcome to the Your Success Personally podcast with your host, yours truly, Vanessa G, where we will talk about success as defined by you. Here, we don't look at the playbook of others to bring you down. Instead, we are going to cover topics that pertain to how you, as an individual, can reach your goals and potential. Don't look at others to define your success. You create it. Your rules, your way, and how you get there. Are you ready? Let's go. Personal accountability. And we are here live here at the Your Success Personally podcast. I am your host, once again, Vanessa G. And I had to repeat all that because I did not press record. This is a live recording, y'all, of our episode tonight. So it is so good to see whoever may decide to join me tonight. I am here at Your Success Personally on Instagram. And once again, thanks for coming through. So it definitely has been a minute. I confess that I have been pretty caught up with my first book. As you could see it in the background, Nothing Wasted, Lessons Learned Along My Journey. And it's available on Amazon, Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com, or Apple Books. And the links I will post in the show notes. But basically, it's been exciting. It's been exciting these last few weeks. And as I have been enjoying the feeling of conquering a huge goal in my life is still going on, right? Which leads to the subject of tonight's podcast episode on personal accountability. I have a few quotes. If you don't mind, I'd like to read for you from some famous people on the subject, right? So as we speak of personal accountability, Eleanor Roosevelt says, "In the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves. The process never ends until we die. And the choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility." This is one from Lori Myers, who I don't really know who she is, but that's okay. "The power behind taking responsibility for your actions lies in putting an end to negative thought patterns. You no longer dwell on what went wrong or focus on whom you are going to blame. You don't waste time building roadblocks to success. Instead, you are free. You are set free and can now focus on succeeding." Here's another one from Brendan Burchard. He says, "Who we become is a result of our disciplined actions." Okay. Alana Hunt, she says, "It is only when you take responsibility for your life that you discover how powerful you truly are." And then there's one, I just have a couple more, by Hal Elrod, who says, "The moment you take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life." Steve Maraboli, he says, "The victim mindset dilutes the human potential. By not accepting personal responsibility for our circumstances, we greatly reduce our power to change them." And then lastly, Wayne Dyer, who I've heard about before, who speaks to personal development, self-help, and the like. He says, "Everything you do is based on the choices you make. It's not your parents, your past relationships, your job, the economy, the weather, an argument, or your age that is to blame. You and only you are responsible for every decision and choice you make, period." So some food for thought, A couple of these people I've heard before, some I haven't, but it doesn't take away from the wisdom in the statements that they've made on accountability. So, what is personal accountability and what is accountability, right? So, accountability defined means the fact or condition of being responsible. Answerability, liability, the expectation of account giving, the assumption of responsibility of decisions, being answerable for resulting consequences. Oh, and I see Ms. Anita there in the chat. Yeah, we all need to work on our accountability. So, personal accountability is being willing to answer for the outcomes resulting from your choices, your behaviors, and from your actions. So, the various definitions of accountability share some common concepts, right? There's a mention of obligation, which is like a duty that comes with consequences. It speaks of willingness, accepting by choice or without reluctance. Also, it's implied the notion of intent, the purpose that accompanies the plan, right? It speaks to ownership. And finally, it suggests having a commitment, right? A feeling of being emotionally compelled. And that is part of what a commitment is. So you mix all that together and you have a definition about accountability. So when you're personally accountable, you take ownership of situations that you're involved in, right? You see them through and you take responsibility for whatever happens, good or bad. You don't blame others if things go wrong, and instead you do your best to make things go right. So I'll use myself as an example because, I love how my life teaches me things. So let's take this podcast, for example, or at least me getting an episode in today. So I knew, or at least I had an approximate date of when my book was going to come out. And I knew that back in June. And I also knew, or rather I had an idea about the other episodes and the subject matters I wanted to cover in July. But I got distracted. And especially I felt overwhelmed. Okay. And I had some moments where I was just overwhelmed by everything, all the details. And once the book came out, I kind of jumped into that and all it entailed to actually announce it, but not really, because honestly, I didn't do enough to understand the whole process of self-promotion, right? And definitely that's going to be a subject matter for this podcast because self-promotion is that's a thing, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing depending on what's going on in your life. But I had somewhat of a hard time with that. And so for sure, I had gotten all into the book. And here we are now, we're close to the end of August. We're close to the end of summer. And it's been a few weeks since I had an opportunity to record an episode, to be here and to share with you guys. So my hope for you, for those who take time to listen in this Instagram Live or just catching up on it on whether on the YouTube or on the podcast platform, is that you consider this as being a community. My hope is to allow this to be a community for inspiration, reflection, and something you can go to learn something, to reflect upon, that would help you on your success journey. So with that said, yeah, I dropped the ball, in this as being my passion project. I had maybe for the last couple of weeks, not only was I all in with the book, but I also found myself somewhat stuck. I think that I also experienced, again, another period of being overwhelmed. And really, it was not just about the book or there was, my life, everything else that goes on in my life besides this. So today, we are here at the Your Success Personally podcast, and we are talking about accountability and mostly about personal accountability. Because I like to believe that success really starts at right here, right? It starts with us, it starts within our mindset. And so you want to have a more successful life, then you definitely have to be accountable for what you do and how you're doing it. So accountability really extends through all parts of our lives, whether it be spiritually, financially, physically, emotionally, all of that. So hopefully you'll get something out of this. So where an expectation of accountability exists, there's three elements, right? There's clarity, commitment, and consequences. Clarity, meaning expectation and goals are clear and specific. You can't hold yourself or anyone else accountable if we aren't clear about what the why is, right? And what the outcomes are to be. Clarity also means understanding what exactly that we are supposed to do, in terms of what you're trying to achieve. Do we know the reasons behind the expectations? And once that happens, then commitment comes to help you grow your goal, right? So when I think about commitment, it's a decision to make, to carry out what we say we want to do or be in life. As it pertains to others, you have to ask for a commitment to get it. Simply giving an order isn't just enough, right? People have to have a buy-in. Let's say you employ someone, they have to understand and agree and commit to achieving that objective. And once you've established something or some goal that you're committed to, then you have to have that I will, right? Sort of mantra to help you continue doing, to continue on the path of whatever the goal is, right? If someone tells you, let's say if you have an expectation of someone else and they say, I try. And in fact, even if you tell that to yourself, I'm going to try to get to the gym, that's not a real commitment. You have to say, I will go. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow at X time of the day or for how many days per week. You can't really be halfway with it. So then after clarity and commitment, then there's the consequence. So let's say you are in some sort of leadership role. When you're a business owner, let's say, you have to create some sort of consequence when the objectives aren't met. And to come up with an appropriate consequence, you need to know the people that are involved. What makes them tick? What are their goals? And how do they define success? But whether in your personal life or as a leader, you have consequences too, right? We have our own. If we're going to be personally accountable, then we have to have our own consequences when we don't meet our own standards. And let me tell you, especially if you feel that you do have some sort of accountability to yourself, it can be real disappointing when you don't keep your promises to yourself. And that feeling to be honest, it sucks. So you don't really want to be in that situation. And that's the whole point of talking about personal accountability. Personal accountability. So what are some of the benefits, and why is being personally accountable important? Well, sometimes it's not easy, whether you're expecting it from someone else or if you're thinking about it for yourself. It's hard, like I mentioned, to fail at a task. But sometimes in those situations, and perhaps even every time, you want to be able to say, you know what, I did mess up, and kind of look back on the situation to see why. Maybe you weren't clear in your own mind about the goal. Maybe you weren't truly committed about what you were doing, right? And perhaps you didn't assign yourself any consequence, or maybe the consequence of not doing what you said you were going to do was not something that was meaningful. So personal accountability for yourself, and particularly as it pertains to others, it helps you to build healthy relationships with friends and with colleagues and family members. You have more positive social interactions. You can then, right, especially as it pertains to ourselves as individuals, you can trust yourself. You can trust yourself that you're going to do right by you. And that's a good feeling. You'll be respected for keeping your word, right? And again, especially to yourself. And finally, and this is not a be all to end all list, but you'll gain some problem solving skills, and who can't benefit from that? So again, when you show that you are trustworthy and dependable and willing to take ownership, even when things fail, you become someone who can be depended upon. And that is a good feeling. So I wouldn't dare leave you without some possibilities on how to become more accountable. So first of all, we need to understand that personal accountability is not something that we're born with. It's something that we learn, all right? And over time, as we practice it, we get to be better and better, right? And in some areas, we might be better or more accountable than in others. And so when we are able to recognize that, we can make those changes. We can work on that. So one way to become more accountable is to know your role. So when I speak of that, I guess I can speak both for yourself, to yourself personally, as well as if you're someone who has to work with someone else. You have clear definition of what you're trying to do. What's the responsibilities for what you're trying to do, and what's the expected outcome? And once you're able to do that, then you can understand and take more ownership about it. For me, this podcast is my baby and it's important to me. And, my book or any other book that I may write, those are important to me as well. So I am responsible for making it the very best that I can make it. And that means creating, that means being willing to tweak things, being willing to understand and get to understand, to learn all the moving parts that come with that and what needs to be done. And also, one thing for me that I know I have to work on is learning how to plan better, to organize and be more organized as I do what I do. And if you work closely with others on a team, just making sure that everyone knows their role and doing what they said they were going to do, right? So they understand what's needed and what's expected of them. Another way to be more accountable is to be honest. Success in life only comes when you're really completely honest with yourself and with others. And I know that's not always an easy thing. It means setting aside your pride and admitting when you have made a mistake. And again, there isn't anyone that sometimes feels a little uncomfortable when they have to come to that realization that, hey, they messed up. When you tell the truth, they, meaning other people, will depend on you for honest opinions, for advice. And it's challenging. It can be challenging. But personal responsibility, it builds integrity, and it reduces a lot of times that consequences of whatever might have went wrong. When people hide from blame or try to ignore the problem, it really doesn't go away. And it ends up making things worse. And, people give you the side eye. They feel like the side eye. They feel like people, like they can't trust you anymore because you weren't honest to begin with. And most people, again, can respect someone who is being honest about their shortcomings. Be honest with yourself. Listen, if you're in way over your head, ask for help. Seek out some help. If there's a task that you're supposed to do and, you can't get to it, or maybe it's too much for you, it's better to ask for help than to sit around and people are expecting you to be there and you're not there. Now, for things that you kind of want to do for yourself, and so you're trying to establish some accountability for yourself, listen, you set an objective. Let's go back to the gym, right? So your objective is to exercise 3 times a week. And you originally say, oh, well, I'm going to go to the gym and do this. But sometimes the weather is not working out right, or maybe, something happens to your car and you can't get there. So whatever the case may be, it's not a mistake that you would want to just decide, oh, I'm no good because I couldn't keep this promise to myself. Holding yourself accountable is saying, all right, I can't go to the gym, but I can take a walk. I can't go to the gym, but you know what? I'll go on YouTube and I'll find an exercise video and, I'll go to the gym next time, right? Another way to be more accountable is say sorry. Say sorry, it's not just about the honesty. It's about, having a contrite heart if you let someone down, when they're expecting you to be there or to do something, or for whatever reason that you might have fell short, you just say sorry. That goes a long way. Focus on making amends. And when you apologize, and show that you'll do and try to make the situation right if at all possible. And let's not forget that we ought to apologize to ourselves and actually forgive ourselves for our mistakes when we say we're going to do something and we don't do it. Even if it's a situation where, feeling lazy or too tired or something like that, or you just didn't feel like it. So for that, you definitely want to give yourself some grace. So when you think about being accountable towards others and you miss the mark, say sorry. And for yourself, show some grace and, trust yourself enough to try again, and make it. So the next way, we have a few more, to make yourself more accountable is to manage your time wisely. So another key attribute of personal accountability is excellent time management skills, which for myself personally, I struggle with that. If you are productively managing your time and your projects, you'll complete your task on time. And the people who are looking to you for that, you'll be able to continue to maintain that relationship in integrity. But again, like I mentioned before, if you can't make it or if it's too overwhelming, you should be asking for help. But when we speak of time management, procrastination will get you every time. It's an easy way to avoid responsibility or just delay with dealing with a situation or task, because not every task is easy, And so procrastination is a way to kind of delay that. But is it any good? No. We all do it. So you have to look at your history and see what your triggers are to being a procrastinator. Sometimes it's happens when you need to have a difficult conversation. You kind of procrastinate about telling this person the bad news. You even procrastinate sometimes when you promised that person that you could finish something for them, and for a myriad of reasons, you just couldn't do it. And sometimes you delay in wanting to tell them the bad news. But as it pertains to yourself, I think that lots of people procrastinate in what they want to do. I think a lot of people, even when they have things that they're dreaming about doing or dreaming about to have some sort of goal come to pass in their life, because of fear, they may procrastinate on those steps to get them to where they want to be. And I tell you, procrastination is no good. It is no good when you feel stuck, right? If you're trying to write something or you're trying to prepare a speech, and sometimes the ideas just don't come. Sometimes you have to walk away a little bit, but you have to come back, You can't wait 3 weeks when you have something due in 2. You know what I mean? So procrastination will definitely not be a good idea for you. The next way to be more accountable is to know your limits. Know your limits. So do you often take too much time because you have a hard time saying no? Does this lead to you dropping the ball because this person wants something from you, this person wants something from you, that person wants something from you? Listen, you're only one person. So sometimes you do have to say no. You have to know your limits. You have to know your boundaries. You have to be mindful of your schedule. You have to kind of look at everything that you have planned to do, everything that you want to do, and everything you've been asked to do, and figure out how you can allocate your limited resources. And sometimes that resource is you. And there's only, there's a finite number of hours in the day to get something done. So be willing to say no, or be willing to say, hey, it just can't happen right now. This is what I'm doing and I just can't do it. So for me, I do have a lot on my plate, and I do have to think about pretty much weekly how I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, because there's a lot of things to kind of, a lot of moving pieces. So you have to be willing to know your limits. Be open to change, by taking personal accountability for your actions and choices and behaviors. You'll want to assess each situation and see where you can improve, right? Ask for feedback, how things could have been done differently. Be open to constructive criticism. Ouch, we don't want to hear that we're not doing a great job, but if we're told in a way that's more life affirming, if you will, it can be useful to us in the long run. In some situations, you want to plan or create a plan for handling this situation in the future. If you didn't like the outcome, whether it was something you wanted to do for yourself or something you wanted to do for somebody else, then it's good to kind of look and see and get an honest reflection of yourself, if it's something about you, and say, okay, where could I have done this better? It really wasn't anyone else's fault but mine. How can I make sure that the next time I have to do this, it'll come out, the outcome will be what I want? Then we want to be outcome driven, right? So at the end of the day, you have a why. And then that means you're doing this because whatever it is. So then what's the goal, right? That's part of that clarity, commitment, and consequence, part of that sequence. What are you doing this for, right? So you have a certain goal in mind. Got to keep your eyes on the prize, as they say, to not only help keep you motivated so that you know where you're going at all times. So if you find yourself veering, then you're like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be doing that because that's not going to get me to where I want to be. So always kind of keep your eye on your outcome. Know who you're doing this for and why. If it's for yourself, why am I doing it? So not everything that we do for ourselves is necessarily the best thing that we could be doing. But let's say there is, you're trying to improve your health. So the goal is to lower your blood pressure. And you have that as the goal. So you know what you have to do because you talk to your doctor. What do I have to do to lower my blood pressure or lower my blood sugar? And I'm sure the doctor has given, some steps. So, well, you do this, you do this, you do this. And so that is how, that is what you need to do. You have to understand what you're doing this for. My health is important, so this is what I'm going to do. If you're doing it for somebody else, you have to understand why you're doing it. So again, being personally accountable is something that even if you're doing something for someone else, it's something that's going to, if you choose to do it, it's going to be something that will give you personal integrity. It'll help you feel good about yourself. People will see you as a trustworthy person. They'll see you as someone, a go-to who is reliable, someone who is trusted. And, what better way to be? And I would also mention, once again, what better way to be and for people to see you in that way? And what better way to be for yourself? Again, one thing I think is the most awful feeling in the world is not keeping a promise to yourself, letting yourself down. And certainly, it happens, and I'm not saying to wallow, but I would hope that anyone listening would decide to keep their promises to themselves. And hopefully they'll be good promises and life-affirming promises, doing the things that they need to do to have the best life that they can. We only have one. So that's my hope. And so before we end, I have a couple of questions that, I'd like for you guys to think about, and I'll definitely post them on this IG post tonight. What does personal accountability mean to you? How are you? How personally responsible, personally accountable, that is, are you? And what areas do you need to work on? And what external or internal work or structures do you need to put in place for you to become more personally accountable? I want to thank you for staying with me for this little while, spending the time, and I hope you guys have a great evening and take good care. Bye now. So, we have come to the end of our time today. I hope our discussion was helpful to you. I wish you positive vibes and encourage you to do you as you climb the ladder of success. If you are feeling this episode, please decide to subscribe and join the success journey. For more encouragement along the way, follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Your Success Personally, and continue to listen wherever podcasts can be found. And remember, your success by your rules. Bye-bye.